Peter and Wendy, an amazing father-daughter combination.
Hi, Sanjeev. How are you?
Building good morning to both of you. You are an inspiration, not
Thank
just to me, but to the whole world of entrepreneurs, where chemistry, intelligence, perseverance of an immigrant from China comes and builds an amazing, successful company in the US, and his daughter is building further on that entrepreneurial success. It is such a privilege to know you both and welcome you to the interviews on what not to do in entrepreneurship.
Pleasure to be here.
Peter, the purpose I began to write this book about a year ago is because I wanted young, inspiring entrepreneurs to learn from all the hard knocks that you and Wendy managed in the past and going forward in building successful entrepreneurial businesses. Because today, entrepreneurship is considered as some kind of a magic that has probabilities of success. So therefore, there is that mystique about it, and still the percentage of success is less than 2 to 3% in the world of entrepreneurial companies. And I wanted the readers to be inspired to learn from you and Wendy some of the things that you would advise them on what not to do. So with that, Peter, I'll go first if it's okay with you, Wendy. Could you share a little bit about your journey on how you got from making a camera for a company with this idea? And I want the viewers to really appreciate what you have gone through in building this company. Uh, for the purpose of viewers, your company is Comet, and it is an most technologically updated machine operations in the Silicon Valley. Peter?
Wendy, you can answer that.
So Peter started in China, obviously, and learned machining from his dad. It was kind of a family trade. A lot of his brothers were in the machining industry as well. They escaped communism in China to Vietnam, so the group in Vietnam continued the machining. That's where he met my mother, had my sister, and then in the middle of all of that, Vietnam became a communist country as well, so they fled on a boat. My mom was pregnant with me. My sister was maybe a year old, and they, ended up in Indonesia, where I was born. And they were in a concentration camp for about a year, I think, before coming to 4 months, even better. Came to the United States. I think he worked for the man for a couple years and decided, what, I got to go and start my own company because that's the American dream. That's how I'm going to provide for my family. And slowly, our extended family, my uncles and whatnot, started coming over.
Wendy, what year was that so that the readers can have?
1979.
Wow.
When we came. And at that time, he, rented a little manufacturing space with 3 other guys and his brothers and started this tiny little shop. And part of it was luck, I think, but being a mechanical engineer, my dad was able to speak engineer to his customers at the time. And, he would often stay overnight to build whatever components in order to get the engineer his work, the parts that he needed to test and whatnot. So I vividly remember sleeping in the lobby on some lobby chairs to run some parts. And it was, it was actually really cool to be able to see a block of metal turn into this thing that went into these high-tech cameras for ultrasound machines, and eventually became, we started serving more semiconductor. So anytime you saw, well, I think it was in college when cell phones started coming out. So the iterations were so amazing to me, and that's why I got into business, and I remember telling my friend in high school, it was like career day. What do you want to be? I want to be CEO of what? I don't know, whatever. As long as I'm a CEO. So that kind of drive I definitely got from my dad. So yeah, I mean, but underneath it all, it was always, what does the customer need? What does the customer want? How does he get first to market? How do they, get their product out? Because if they don't succeed, then we don't succeed. As high quality as the parts are, if the customer doesn't succeed, they're not going to buy anything.
So if you just go through that initial part of starting the dream, or from Peter's point of view, because a dream is a dream at any point in time, right? And the conditions around the dream may change, but the dream is always a dream.
Mm-hmm.
What is some of the things that Peter would share that he learned, that he would advise others what not to do during those initial formations of that business?
Only thing you work hard.
Work hard.
Work hard.
Work hard.
And continue to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Peter, working hard, of course, is required. Continuing to learn is important. But what is it that when you was it the fact that you wanted to improve your skills or both, of course, to provide for your family? What was that kept you awake every night, and so therefore you did not want, uh, you wanted to make sure that Wendy learned also those things? And what would that be that you could share with the people? Say, this is why I want you to know, not to forget this, or not to, something. That's what I'm looking for, because it is so important. You lived in a concentration camp, or, and left the country, and you had no idea of what opportunities in business in America is, and you started, right? And so that had something in it that made you that happen. What was
Well, and like I say, you want to success, you need to follow the trend of the new technology. Right? The world is more advanced. You on that field, you follow that field, the technology, you follow up, and if you don't know it, you keep learning it, and then always be the follow up with the top of the technology. Then we're not fall behind. So that's how you can success. If you can keep it up, then you're not going to fall. Then you success, right?
Yes. So, Wendy, am I correct in interpreting this from you as an outsider when you were starting the business? To know that whatever business path that you choose, whatever that is, ensure that you don't do it because that was your passion. You do it because there was a roadmap to that technology or to that passion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you inject, not just because you felt the passion, you inject, you understand where things are going.
Yeah.
And then you follow that mission. Otherwise, it's like opening a restaurant because you cook some egg foo young well, but if the world is going away from egg foo young,
yeah, no, you're exactly right. Is that, constantly being a student of what technology is doing and understanding how it all kind of comes together, then it's a lot easier to understand, oh, there's a gap here, there's a need here. Let's go fill that need. You know, we don't need to make egg foo young anymore. We need to make chow mein now. Then we need to go and make chow mein now.
Okay.
Being
So,
flexible, definitely.
yeah, so it's very, we are translating it, what he's saying, to on a broader scale of things, that wherever an entrepreneur, don't get involved at a point in business, get involved in an evolution of the roadmap of the business and keep abreast of that roadmap. Peter, is that the message that you are sharing with us?
What?
Yes.
Yes.
So, so Wendy, as you saw Peter building this business, and as young blood that you are, because this is a rare opportunity for me to interview some, from a dynamics of the business. When you saw that, your father building the business, what are some of the things that you thought that he should have done different, but learned that maybe, no, I was wrong as a younger generation, because most
Mhm.
younger generation thinks that the older generations are not doing the things right, in the
Mhm.
early stages of the business, or they want to radically change. I would love to learn from you, looking back at those years, how
Mhm.
you felt, and what are some of the things that you thought you could do, you wouldn't now want to do.
Outside, just fresh out of an MBA, I thought, well, he wasn't organizing the company correctly. He didn't pay enough attention to the head count. Employee morale was very important, but he wasn't really paying attention to that kind of thing. He was a very technical guy, and he was concentrating on delivering excellent parts on time, but from a machine shop point of view, we had so many employees and turnover, how come nobody's tracking turnover and all that stuff. So I kind of came at it very, very gung ho. Um, and it took me a couple of years to realize that he actually was paying attention to his turnover. And he did it in his old school way that wasn't formalized. I couldn't bust out a graph that said turnover is 12.2%. Um, so yeah, I probably wouldn't have approached it that way in the beginning if I could do it again.
So just from a summary, Peter, as you can see how entertaining and informative this is, right, for the younger generation to looking at the earlier generation doing business with. So what I'm learning from you, Wendy, and by the way, thank you for that learning, is that there is a method to this madness, right, based on experience that has been ingrained in the process. It's just that when younger minds come out of it, it takes them a little while to really understand that it may not be perfect, but there is some level of the internal sophistication that makes the system work. So don't be a judge immediately as you foresee. Is that sort of one of the potential messages, Windy, that you could share with the younger entrepreneurs?
Yeah, definitely try to understand the full picture before judging. There's definitely room for improvement always, always learning, but there's value in what's happening and it kind of all fits in the ecosystem. So picking apart one thing might not actually be beneficial.
Very valuable. Peter, do you have a comment on that? Yes?
Yes.
No, no. What I think that she made a very, very important observation for the readers, which is give understand what the solutions are in it and improve upon the solution. Don't radically change the solution because of your experience and things like that you have built in the process.
Mhm.
Peter, during this journey with your daughter, and she's been an amazing partner in the journey with you. There were a few things in your life, or few people in your life besides your daughter, that contributed to your success. if somebody had to say, wow, if something like this happened, those are initiations, or those show that they are elements of success, what would a couple of those things be in your journey that made you even a more successful entrepreneur than you thought you were going to be?
What made you successful? What or who made you successful?
I, I think what makes me successful is in the beginning, it's myself when, right? Yeah, and nobody in that time, um, Wendy is still young, right? So when Wendy go up and then finish the MBA and then come to health, then that we continue the, the company is going up and getting better, and then the more success than before.
But were there a couple of people, there was somebody from the outside world that you met, they were like, you saw, wow, he's a godlike person, or this is a godlike event that changed? What was those couple of things that you remember, those say, wow, because of that, that helped me build my success? What would that be? Wendy, you and he can share that, either of you.
Did you get any advice from somebody or any support?
Um, oh, I got a lot of friends, like one of the engineering in Hitachi instrument, and then he before he worked for I worked for the first company I worked for is a Hitachi. It's Hitachi Engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and then after he quit the job at the Hitachi, he go to Applied Material, and then because that serve the good and then good quality, so when he go to Hitachi, I mean he after he left Hitachi, he go to Applied Material, and then he introduced my company to the applied material people. So then I become a supplier for applied material.
And
That's
that has been, yeah, and that has been a significant
yeah.
help for you, right,
Mhm.
Wendy? I mean, so, and obviously, Peter, Wendy, could there be something like one for you? And I'm going to summarize that. But there is something like that one in your journey as you escalated from being a college business graduate to being a businesswoman with Peter. Were some things like that in your journey that you think of, besides your dad, of course?
There was, a lot of professors that kind of give little bits of advice that eventually kind of all pieced together that kind of created these light bulb moments. But yeah, there's been a lot of support systems. So, my mom obviously was very supportive in the background, taking care of a lot of things while we were off being business people. So, and my husband, who you would not think would be a good partner for me, kept me grounded, kept me going, on all those days where it's like, oh, I can't do it, I give up. And like, no, keep going, keep going. So yeah, a lot of support in the background, the whole family village.
Yeah. So it takes a village to succeed, kind of
Yeah,
one thing,
absolutely. Yeah. I
and
mean,
rely on the village, a part
I
of the.
mean, a lot of credit goes to the lightning bolt, the spearhead that starts the whole thing. But in order for them to continue going, there's all these people behind that, my grandma basically raised us, and she was my first example of a very strong woman who was running. She had 9 kids in the United States. She couldn't speak English. And then she cared for all these, like, I think there's like 40 of us cousins, so there's a lot of examples personally in the family that was enabling us to be successful.
And you count that as a building block towards your business of relying on the village. And Peter, what you shared, wisdom, which is so important, is do not ever create a bad influence because during your initial any type in the business, or try to keep as perfect a record of or as good a record, because that break that your friend gave you from your good performance at Hitachi Engineering, that translated into your entry point of credibility into applied materials, created for you a pathway of success. And so the what not to do is, do not undervalue your skills and quality at any stage, because you never know when that can leverage into the growth of your business. And Wendy, yours is, it helped me know that infrastructure of a village, I never felt that your entrepreneurship is by me, but it takes a few of us to create that structure. And that is sort of the one and the twos here. That and is that my summary worthwhile for the people, for the readers to understand some of the elements that made you very successful?
Yeah, I think so. Don't burn the
Peter,
bridges.
yeah, is there anything more you want to add to that kind of stuff?
Yeah, he basically said you never know who you're going to meet. That person might give you the opportunity.
Yeah.
And Wendy, the other aspect of having this journey is, I'm assuming that Peter, when he sells his companies and things like that, or you of course, but you have years to grow through. Peter would be called business school in China to talk about how to build a successful business in the world, or a global business. What would some of the things be that he would say to the children, to the entrepreneurs in China that want to listen to him? What were some of the things that he would say besides the one that he has already told me?
Yeah.
What would some of those things be?
Advice to build a global company.
That make me move up the company to create another shop to China. Is actually the mayor, the Sunnyvale, that time invite me to join him to go to visit China to start the sister city with the Sunnyvale. That time in Sunnyvale, then I go with him and go to China. That the first time I go to China.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, first time to go to China, and then China coming in and kind of scared. That's why I never go there. And this time, because the U.S. measure to go with me, so I go there and take a look. So that and then I find out the China is to open the door for the world. So, and then on that time, 19 that year 2000 or 2022, not really remember. And I see they open the world, and then a lot of U.S. company talking about the move the factory to the lower labor region. That's why, and then another why the China people invite me to go there and create a shop. So I think that the chance to go the company, follow the large company, the world company like Applied Materials. So then I start go to China to from establish the shop over there. So that actually the shop that grand opening in 2004 uh, Christmas, and then started.
Wow.
But
What would
because
you
the
tell
low,
young people? Any advice now that you have the experience?
No, there is a lot of advice here he's giving. What I am hearing, and you are younger, of course, is that connect, use, do not forget to use the opportunities of visiting and expanding, on the global basis, because you never know what opportunities may come, because he just went to visit a different place with the mayor of US mayor of San Jose or wherever he was, and that he didn't know when he was going to go there, that there would be an opportunity. So it's called, Windy, in the spiritual world, you don't know what you don't know. And he was open to pursuing the don't know what you don't know. And he went there and he found this opportunity. So the message is, don't don't leave on the table such opportunities that may you never know what they could bring, because today Hamed has a very successful China operation,
Mhm.
and he has been working through it, and since 2000 or 2001, 2002. So that's what I am reading into. But it would be good to hear, Wendy, your perspective of what he said, because that comes from a totally different mindset. Please.
We all thought he was crazy. So, it's kind of like, well, you haven't been in China for so many years, and, how do you know how to do business there? Yeah, you can speak the language, but what about the culture, the communism? How much is the government going to control it all? But it takes someone who with a crazy idea to pull off crazy. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. And don't pass up the opportunities. There's you never know what chance encounters will lead to.
Yes. So, from your point of view, it is, don't underestimate the craziness and the
Mhm.
possibilities that craziness might create as a part of building a business. That's your sort of the interpretation of it. Is that correct? Peter, see now, in this, you didn't know that she considered you as a crazy to go to Thailand that time. But anyways, uh, Wendy, that is a very good learning, because some things that we feel are sometimes crazy, or can create something significant. And I'm so proud that Peter not only stuck to his gut, which is the other message, stick to your gut, and then to just sticking to the gut is important, Wendy. But what is important is he made something out of that thought process. The people, you have to make available the opportunity that was offered to you, and stick to your gut, and now you have a very successful business infrastructure, which started as a part of craziness in China. Isn't that a perfect way of looking at how entrepreneurial businesses can succeed?
Yeah.
Great message. Wendy, my question to you is, if you think dad had to do all of these things all over again,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you would suggest to him that he do differently?
Knowing what I know today, there's certain points where I would say go bigger, go bigger. Um, you know, Having confidence in the crazy and pulling things off. There's definitely examples where if you had made just this little slightly different decision, you could have been, much bigger. But, Peter said, I think he would have been more conservative. I would have been crazier, because he's always said, this far exceeds my wildest dreams, so I'm good.
So is it about the size of the dream, Wendy? So what you are saying is don't dream small, and is that. But give me a couple of give the readers a couple of specific examples that
Mhm.
you feel could be could be in a non-conservative mode, if I may put it that way,
Mhm.
could have been done different.
A very recent decision in 2016, we moved our facility from Sunnyvale to Milpitas. And at the time we were looking at buildings, it was kind of a guessing game. How big should we go? How much square feet should we get? And at the time, I think we were a combined of maybe like 30,000 square feet. And we were looking at these buildings anywhere from 50,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet, 120,000 square feet. And I'm like, we got to get the 100,000 square feet, because if you build it, they will come. And Peter's like, ugh, but downturns, and we got to kind of hedge. And so we ended up with 65,000 square feet. In 2 years, we had outgrown ourselves, and we ended up buying the building next door. So now we're at 100 square feet, 100,000 square feet. So I think
But he was right? The downturn did hit a little bit and stuff like that.
it did hit a little bit, but we've weathered it okay. That's one thing that Peter's actually really good at is running it kind of like an ice cream store. You got to be prepared for the winter months, take advantage of the boom months in the summer, so that you can weather the winter and not have to, do all the bad things that come with a downturn and survive that. So that's how we've been able to not only survive, but thrive through the very cyclical nature of semiconductor.
Sure. So that's a very interesting what not to do from a perspective. Okay? From a younger generation perspective, it is to take into account the when you are going to do the effort, take into account the larger growth picture. And from an experienced generation account is, hey, there is potentially that conflict. And so for from a realistic entrepreneur point of view, is maybe based on the success you achieved by mutually compromising it, is maybe you should kind of don't go to the other extreme, but you can come in the center of it somewhere, and still build the growth in stages and achieve. Are you feeling that Peter would still agree to take the 110,000 now, or does he still think that his decision of taking the 65,000 was the correct decision, Peter?
Depend Wendy and the surround people how they can help. I cannot do it myself to make a company bigger if they want. Yeah, of course, I don't mind making the company double bigger, triple bigger, because one person cannot do everything. So I need the people around to work together to build up the company bigger and bigger. That's the more important. Not just thinking, I want it big. It's not. I need the people around to, they have the skill, and they have the willing to go up with her, and that's the more important. So that's why we build up actually it's slowly. The company been almost 40 years, but still not the big company like the other. Because I want to step by step to go up. When we step up, then we don't worry about we have to reverse, go down. So we have very very strong to make move. We're not gonna move up crazy, reach to to go up. That's how my goal. Same thing like we don't borrow money from the bank to buy the machine. We have money, we buy the machine because we don't worry when winter or say like we've been past all the year we've been uh, 89 uh, and then start come album and then until today we've been past a lot of downturn. We still survive.
Yeah.
That's how we go the company. Yeah. And we go, I want to go, but basic around and then to condition to go.
Yes, Peter, but this is a very important message, Wendy, and very valuable message, both for those people, and sometimes it depends upon the type of the business, of course. But the important message, Peter, thank you for that, is that you are when you take huge steps in going to the next stage. Remember, when you have to climb those steps back, those will also be huge, right? So his guidance is take go higher, but go in smaller steps. Don't go higher in one huge step. Because Peter, that's the message that I am getting from the conversation, and I'm going to have Wendy look at it in a different way, because all of this is a very interesting for entrepreneurs to look at. And how and why? Because when you take the big step, like going to the bank for borrowing monies or to somebody else to grow, you may lose the control of your business. And taking smaller steps enables you to keep the control while going up,
Yes.
and retract back slowly when you have to go down. Peter is therefore a very critical message
Thank
for
you.
younger entrepreneurs who really understand the value of building in steps, right? Because the golden rule is the man with the gold rules. If the gold is in somebody else's hand, like the bank, then they rule. So therefore, Wendy, I have a other side of this question for you. We just learned something very valuable from people. We're looking back from a younger generation mind. What is your risk assessment of of taking the big steps versus taking the small steps, as now you have experience to adjust and to execute, because now you are the next generation to execute? What would your advice be to the readers than that?
Taking the smaller steps is definitely safer. It's easier. It's less stressful. I mean, you can definitely control the pieces better. If you lose a key person or whatnot, you're not gonna fall backwards that far, or worst case, pause right at that step if that step is foundationally sound. Yeah, so it's definitely a conservative way to go. For it might take longer to get there, but it's more secure, I would say. There's part of me that still is like big risk, big reward. If you can pull it off, if you have the confidence in the personnel and the environment to pull it off, it can definitely happen. But in our industry, I think slow and steady wins the race.
So, Peter, a part of your thought process is to hand over a very successful business that you have spent so many years in building, and allow this young lady with a dynamic mind and lots of great experience. What are some of your concerns as an entrepreneur, what would you tell her what not to do as you hand over the reins of building this business into something even
I think, like I say, I building slowly. The most important is building the system. Like in China, I built China the system. China now almost 15, 16 years now. We have a system like coronavirus right now. I didn't have, I cannot go to China for almost a year, but the China is still running very smooth because the system. The now the China don't need me to run the China because the system running, each person running on their staff like a big company. The CEO don't have to go to Japan or go to there to watch the people running the business. We can remote or they are automatic running the business. So same thing. The more important that the system. So right now, the no matter in the U.S. or China, without me, it's still running.
So, Wendy, what he's saying, what I am hearing from him as a message to all such cases is that do not underestimate the value of the systems you established in order for you to move on to the bigger things. So, the message that he shares with us as if I'm an entrepreneur, and of course, I want your background systems, that it is important that you move on to bigger things, but it is also important to make sure that the earlier things do not forget to put the house in order so that you can take on bigger responsibilities. Is that something that, Wendy, is what you read, or did you read differently, and what would that be?
No, that's what I understood it. I definitely have learned that lesson from him. So whenever I do things, it's always with the mindset of what happens if I'm not here? What happens if I get hit by a bus? What happens if the project manager gets hit by a bus? What happens then? So really big on procedures, written documents, closed loop systems. So at any time somebody else could take over and the whole system doesn't fall apart, if it doesn't come to a screeching halt.
So from your point of view, you agree with Peter, is that yes, I have learned from you not to undervalue and not to forget to reinforce the systems that are in place before you pursue significant growth.
Yeah.
Correct? So that's a very valuable lesson for entrepreneurs to know, because they are all over the place and causes that kind of an structure. Wendy, I have asked you and Peter a lot of questions. Thank you for the answers. What are some of the questions that each one of you might want to ask me as a part of this being a fair conversation?
Is there anything that you've learned in these interviews that you could share some wisdom with us?
Well, yes, I have learned a lot, not just something, I've learned a lot. Peter, do you have a question? So I can answer his question also.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Like Wendy say, and you learn something, you share with us. And I always say, we keep learning. I want to
Yes.
learn from you too.
Yes. No, learning is a process, by the way, Peter. And I get inspiration because every time you and I, and we haven't spoken as often as I would like to, I've kept that be the process of learning to be a continuous process. And so, Wendy, here is what some of the things that I have, which you already have. One of the things that I learned for entrepreneurs is to understand that humility is very important. And you and Peter are an example of humility. You may not know that. Humility, when I speak with you or with Peter, you always communicate with such humility, and it is a pleasure, therefore, to be associated and to understand how, because the learning happens on an equal basis then. It doesn't happen from a teacher to a student. It happens on a very business level, and that probably comes from your it takes a village philosophy to succeed. So, what I would share my learnings with you in that manner, and some of the things that I learned from the interview is, when you are growing, there are always certain glass doors or the glass that we think. Peter thought that his glass is being a successful businessman more than his dream. So the dream in his mind to me was a glass ceiling. Now that allowed that subconsciously, was allowed him to be contented in what it is. Now during these interviews, what I realized is that although difficult, and you just shared some of the things, is that you keep on raising the glass ceiling yourself, because you can do learning in saturation or you can do learning in expansion. And learning in expansion is not just increasing efficiency, it is increasing the value also. So a part of what I learned during this interview is that in that expansion, do not be afraid to tap into the resources that are continuously evolving in reality. For example, there is a whole series of wealth that is available in capital that is called as non-controlling capital. Not the banks, but private wealth. So a lot of people always relate to the cutthroat capital definition of private equity or venture capital. They're always afraid. And that's that's the original glass ceiling. Now you as a person can tap into the so what the because the world of wealth has changed. The world of wealth has expanded so significantly that the wealth seeks opportunities like yourself, not necessarily for a change of control, but for the process of creating more wealth. And you, Wendy, should not be in the change of control mode. For him, I understand. I mean, from a perspective of the glass ceiling. And so there is your glass ceiling of wealth expansion has so much journey ahead. So what not to do is don't operate your glass ceiling and his glass ceilings are two different things. If you can create an expansive glass ceiling with your solid background of the small steps of the grit, of the importance of the village, you can create more wealth in your journey than he has created in his journey in a shorter period of time because the world around you has changed. And that is something that I learned during this process of, from what not to do from other. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And because you will never get, this is my personal, of an incredible father who created such value for his daughter, but handing over that value and to not create to the next generation is probably a missed opportunity of. So that's If I want to say to you in one what not to do not operate to the same glass ceiling. Find your glass ceiling because there is so much wealth you can create. Now, I understand wealth is relative. I understand, but business is about wealth creation.
Mhm.
So that's just. And for Peter, what can I say? You are the person that everybody should learn from. So, uh, only thing I can say to you from what I learned from the interviews is share your knowledge with more people so that more people be inspired all around the world, especially with what you have done in a father-daughter relationship and with other businesses that will grow because you inspired them. Guys, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
Thank
you.
you.
time. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was such a privilege to really get all of this wisdom to the readers.
Thank you.
Mm.